Hello, hello. So, welcome back to another episode of the MBG Chats podcast, which is a spin off series of the Mastering Business Growth podcast. And today I'm joined by James Allan, who is the founder of Smelly Men. I was really looking forward to saying that, by the way. He's, would you say you are Chief Smelly Man, or how would you introduce
I am
yourself, James?
the smelliest man. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the founder. I'm the dog's body. It's me, and lately my wife Cara, who is just coming in as the smelly woman, because we're launching Smelly Women as well.
Excellent.
So yeah, I suppose it all sounds very kind of flash when you say, "Oh yes, I'm a founder of a brand," but the reality is, of course, it's just you, and you're doing all the jobs. So you can, you're the accountant, the marketer, you're the person who procures the products, you're boxing up everything, you're doing it all. And, that's just the way it is when you start a small business, isn't it?
That's it. And this is the reason this podcast kind of exists, really, is to bring those kind of realities to life a little bit. Entrepreneurship is glamorized a lot of the time, but there's a reason for that, because the upside is potentially incredible if you get it right. And obviously you're not going to get it right first time. That's that's kind of a given, but it's just to highlight some of the things, some of the realities of entrepreneurship. But so yeah, founder of Smelly Men, sorry. How did that come about? How long have you been doing that now?
We're pretty young as a brand. I mean, it's just over a year. We started on September the 16th, 2024. So yeah, we're just probably 13 months into it now. And I founded the brand. It was complete chance, complete accident, really. I hadn't got a sort of long-term plan I must found a men's personal care brand, before I die or anything. It wasn't that at all. It was, I'd been working in advertising and marketing for a very long time. Basically, I'm a planner, if that means anything to anyone. If you work in the advertising business, it might do, but outside of that, I'm a strategy bloke. And I've done that for a long time, done that for 25 years. I've been around agencies all that time. I'd, done a lot of sort of different kind of jobs, different kind of categories. So I'd worked across lots of different businesses. But after a while, working in the corporate world, it just starts to grind at you a little bit. I just wanted to do something different, and it was time to sort of give it a go. And I was freelancing, and that's okay, but you're still working in the same world. And I still freelance, actually. So yeah, if anyone wants a freelance strategist, I'm still around. But the brand came about because I do jiu-jitsu, actually. I started training jiu-jitsu about 6 years ago. And if you're not familiar with jiu-jitsu, it's one of these sort of martial arts where it's very intense when you begin, and you're all over the place, and you're being beaten up all the time, because it's a very kind of serious contact kind of martial art. And it's one of those things where you think you can handle yourself. Like a lot of men walk around thinking, yeah, I'd probably be okay. Someone tried to strangle me. And then you rapidly find out you're not capable of that at all. So I'd been training for about 6 years, and I guess probably about a year or two ago, we had a new member join the club, and he was finding it quite tricky. He was being quite overwhelmed, and I gave him just a little bit of help. I was trying to, not scare him off, basically. And he presented me with a little gift at Christmas, just to say thanks for sort of looking after him a bit and giving him a bit of encouragement, which was a very nice surprise. And the gift was a bar of natural soap, which sounds really kind of innocuous, and why is that significant? But it's basically because I hadn't used a bar of natural soap in years. I mean, I was a shower gel and body spray guy. Like most men, we just pick it up off the shelf in the supermarket. That'll do. And I used this soap, and I just thought, this is bloody lovely. This is really nice. This is not soap. Soap is supposed to be sort of horrible stuff that dries your skin out, and it's just a bit nasty, and it costs about 50p. But this was nice, luxury, natural soap, like the stuff I sell now. And it just got me thinking, and I just had this sort of, I suppose you could say, eureka moment of, why is men's personal care so bad? Why is it such a rubbish category? And why is it not changed for at least the last 25 or 30 years? I mean, basically the stuff you buy now is the same stuff certainly I was using as a kid, and probably you were using as a kid as well, and it just hit me that men are just really badly served by the category. And I think it's a sort of half apathy that men just go, well, it'll do. It's all right.
Yeah.
And the industry going, well, they don't really care. So we might as well just flog them the same old shit that we have done for years.
I was just about to say that.
Everyone's
I
happy.
was just about to say that's my mentality as well. So it's like, if you're just doing it, the big corps, the ones selling it, your Shures, your Brutes, your Lynx, they're just going to carry on the same as normal because, well, people can still
Absolutely.
keep buying it. Why not?
Yeah. Why, it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing. And that kind of irritated me. And I just thought, well, what's the alternative? Well, yes, I've just used a soap bar that I really liked. And I was starting to look around and say, well, what's out there? And yet there are other brands. There are other brands selling natural products to men. I'm not completely unique. I mean, there's one huge one in America called Dr. Squatch, which you may have
That's
heard
the one
of.
I had in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, that was started by a guy in about 2013, 2014. And he kind of had the same thought as me. I think he was like an MBA student or something. So he's quite a smart guy. And he started it in his bedroom, and it kind of took off. And then it exploded. I mean, it became a huge brand. I mean, the last time I looked, it was about a $200 million brand, and it's probably even more now. They've got private equity involved, and they've turned into that kind of business. So without wishing to be disparaging towards a competitor, it's changed. It's not the cottage industry it was. It hasn't got quite the same approach, but incredibly successful. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I could do something similar, because when you look at the category, it's an enormous category for men, but it's an absolutely phenomenally big category for women. So even if you have the tiny, tiny sliver of that category, then that's quite okay. I might be happy with that. So I thought, well, okay, let's see what I can do. What can I come up with? Can I source the products? But how do I position myself? Had to use the old strategy brain and, the advertising experience to think about that. And the name really came about because if I had to do anything, I have to be quite distinctive and I have to be different. First rule of advertising, get noticed, because otherwise no one's going to bother. And I'm happy to say that pretty much everyone that hears the name Smelly Men kind of does a double take, and they either smile after they do a double take or they just go, what? And that's kind of okay. I'm sort of happy with that. The people that smile, you're my people.
Yeah.
And if you don't
Well, that was me.
it's fine.
That was me. It's like, I
Well,
like that name.
I'm glad, and it was very, very deliberate. I wanted to be distinctive and bold and get people to stop. And that's the job. And I suppose since then, it's evolved a little bit, and it's this sort of idea of what does it mean to be smelly? Because I want people to be smelly, which is counterintuitive. But the idea of smelly is it's sort of like we're reclaiming the word smelly. And what we mean by that is don't accept the crap that you're getting right now. Ironically, and Smelly Men is ironic, of course, being smelly is not accepting things as they are and actually wanting something much better, actually wanting better quality, wanting natural ingredients, wanting no single-use plastic to be involved, so everything's recyclable. And to do that is pretty straightforward. You don't have to buy products that have awful chemicals in them, and you don't have to buy products that use lots of plastic. And you end up smelling better as well. That's the whole point, really. So it's like a sort of small contribution, but actually makes quite a big impact. Ultimately, it's better for you, and it's giving more consideration, if you like, to personal care. Because men, as I said earlier, men are just rather guilty, and I was probably one of them, of just going, oh, well, it's just shower gel, it's just body spray, it's fine, it'll do. And we just end up all smelling like lemon fresh kitchen cleaner or pine fresh toilet cleaner.
I mean, that's me today, yeah. But there's a few things I want to unpack, actually, because I think what's interesting about you is that you're going into product side from the marketing background, and quite a lot of people potentially move the other way, actually.
Yeah.
So there's that bit, but I just want to start with something that I saw recently, which is and it was actually a health professional. Like he's a personal trainer, but he's a nutritionist and he's a health professional as well. And he was basically saying that some of the stuff that men use actually reduces the testosterone in you, and like some of the chemicals, the microplastics, all of those kinds of quite carcinogenic as well, like harmful products that they put in, reduces your testosterone. So you actually end up, ironically, by using what you would deem a manly product, you're actually reducing your manliness in terms of hormonal testosterone. Um, have you found anything that kind of backs that up, or?
There's research out there, but because, I mean, I don't want to start any conspiracy theories, but there isn't a lot of absolutely conclusive evidence. But they're called endocrine disruptors. The one that crops up quite a lot is a form of preservative, and they're called parabens. And parabens are basically put in to preserve products to make sure they don't sort of degrade or go off over time. But there's been quite a lot of study going on around parabens and what they can do and how they can interrupt endocrine function. And part of that obviously is the reproductive function. I haven't got conclusive evidence, but it's not good, the stuff that's been found. There are also other products, or rather other ingredients that typically go into a lot of personal care products. One massive problem is what's called parfum. So if you look at a shower gel, it will have usually something that's rather, again, innocuously called parfum, and you think, oh, it's just like perfume, it's scent or whatever. But it's actually a kind of umbrella term that the industry uses as a sort of loophole. And the reason it came about was the fragrance industry wanted to protect its formulations because, of course, they don't want the world knowing exactly what goes into their perfumes. And the personal care kind of category uses that same loophole to basically just wrap up a bunch of chemicals into a thing called parfum, and you've no idea what's in there at all. You just have to just go, okay, then, as long as it smells nice. And we have no idea what you're putting on your skin. Of course, the skin is the biggest organ in the body, and it absorbs everything. And I don't want to come off this as some kind of crazy kind of conspiracy theorist, as I've said.
Well, no,
I
asked the question. It was my, I was told this, and again, I didn't ask any kind of backup evidence for it, which is my bad on that one. As someone working in the industry and creating these products, and maybe that's the insight here, is that there just isn't maybe enough research around it.
It's exactly that, and I think for me, there's enough concern or doubt for me to think, well, I don't really want to carry on with that. I've been using that sort of stuff for a long time, and I think there's probably quite a few people listening who have done the same. And why would we know any better? Because the industry wants to keep it quiet. They don't really want to talk about the fact that these chemicals are going into these products. And another statistic which actually cropped up for me when I was doing another job, I was looking into why people go to the GP. And you think, well, there's a variety of complaints. But when I dug into the NHS data, I found out that 1 in 4 GP visits every week is for a skin complaint, some kind of dermatological problem. And from that, we could probably infer we're talking about, rashes or, unexplained sort of irritation or itching or whatever it might be. And I don't think it's a huge stretch to say that that's probably caused by stuff that's been put on the skin or has come into contact with the skin, whether it's, laundry products or whether it's shower gels and that sort of stuff. But when you extrapolate that 1 in 4 visits to GPs throughout the country, that is an awful lot of people going to the GP and a lot of NHS time spent on trying to basically sort out contact dermatitis, which is a lot of it.
I mean, it's literally about 15 million. Like, if we think about the population of the UK, it's like literally like it's potentially about 15 million people at some point will go for skin irritation or whatever.
It's a massive number, and if you then consider what the average cost of a GP visit is to the NHS, and you do the maths, and you come up with a very big number. So there's an economic argument, to
Yeah.
sort of reject these kinds of products, or at least, at the very least, improve them significantly. But the industry doesn't really show that much sign of doing that. And men are just sort of left with the same old. And they might tinker with a scent, which obviously means more parfum, but that's kind of it. And when you look at the women's category, which, if we were going to represent it, it's probably like a beach ball versus a tennis ball in terms of relative size. The women's category is mostly focused on trying to make women feel like they're not really good enough and they actually need to improve. And that's the whole job of the category. Because if you thought you were okay, you wouldn't buy it, would you? So most female-oriented skincare is about making you look younger, skinnier, more, dewy looking, or whatever it might be. But the underlying message is you're not really good enough, are you? You need to be a little bit better, so we can help with that, which is quite insidious when you think about it.
It is. And it actually gets me thinking about the other brand you mentioned, the Dr. Swatch, rather, sorry. Because I've seen their advertising. And they go out on a limb to kind of enhance that kind of sexualization of like personal care, and they essentially, basically the advertising. And I'm not here to slate them; they're doing what they want to do, but they're essentially saying like, I used to basically not go near my husband until he started wearing this. And it's like,
I mean,
really?
it's the link strategy revisited, isn't it? I mean, I'm old enough to remember the 90s Lynx advertising, which at the time was considered, sort of groundbreaking. But it was the Lynx strategy has been, use this and chicks will dig you.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. And not much has changed really. I mean, I suppose they've slightly dialed back on certain, message, so the sort of literal messaging of that. But what was interesting about Dr. Squatch is when it first started, it was actually really quite refreshing because they didn't talk about that kind of stuff. It was basically, I suppose it's basically what I've been talking about is I think their messaging was, why are you washing in dish soap? Which is true, and they were quite inventive and they were, breaking all the conventional rules, and they were doing some really funny stuff and basically saying, you're a bloke, why are you washing in this rubbish? Use this and you'll smell like a lumberjack and everything will be much better. And then I think with the coincidence of them being bought out and being owned by private equity, obviously lots of other people got involved and said, you know what, we need to use sex to sell this stuff. And that's what young men like. And hence Sydney Sweeney got hired, and, the rest is history, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, they're clearly very successful and they're selling to a demographic which seems to really appreciate it. And if I'm being really magnanimous, I'd say, well, at least it's getting men to use better quality products.
I was just about to say, at least it's a decent product. At least it's a decent product. Exactly. And hopefully private equity hasn't spoilt the product, reducing costs and things like that.
I think they probably have, but the sad thing is that they've moved back to plastic. So they probably argue that it's a better, it's a biodegradable, or but they sell shower gels, they sell, other products which use plastic materials. But yeah, overall, it's probably a good thing because they've disrupted this industry and they've actually grown into something significant enough that maybe the industry is going to start taking more notice and start to improve what they offer.
I mean, it happened with Wild as well, didn't it? They got bought out recently with Unilever, and it's, they went full disruption to the point where they weren't even profitable until their final year before acquisition. And it's like, they went full disruptor. They were a real sort of disruptor brand, but I think they're unisex, aren't they? I think they go after, I think they go
the
after
female
both.
Deodorant market has been really interesting, actually.
It's gone like.
Can you hear me? Okay, I think you're breaking up a little.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, don't worry.
Sorry, your video link was getting a little bit. Could be my Wi-Fi. I'm not sure, but yeah, I was just thinking about the women's deodorant sort of developments, with Wild and Fussy, which I suppose technically is unisex, but it's probably more oriented towards women. Yeah. And I think that it's good because it's using a natural product, but you've still got plastic containers. They're still attached to this idea that you have to have this reusable container, which is fine until you don't use it. And, the more successful they get, the more plastic containers are going to sit inside someone's bathroom cabinet, which will ultimately get thrown in the bin.
Yeah.
So, no.
Coming back to Smelly Men then, but like obviously you've got clearly a wide view, a wide purview of what the industry is doing, what other people are doing, and you've got this richness of marketing and advertising and strategy behind you as well. What's your, I mean, without giving too much away, but like, what do you think is going to be your lever, your growth lever moving forward? Like, how are you reverse engineering what you're planning? Essentially, what do those steps look like? Just to give us a bit of insight, bit of transparency into what a brand like yours in a big category like personal care is doing to try and sort of win market share.
Well, I suppose from the beginning, I had to be very I had to acknowledge the fact that I was up against an enormous machine, and the idea that I was suddenly going to get, a huge, or significant market share was ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But as I said, my sort of business strategy, if you like, is I'll have a tiny sliver of a very massive pie, please. And if I can start to do that, then that becomes quite a good day for me. That's really useful. There's plenty to go round, and I can make my brand reasonably successful off a very small sort of share of it. I began thinking getting into the multiples was something I wanted to do. And then I realized that because of the way that retail buying works, and this is not something I've got a background in at all. You made a point earlier about, me moving from the agency side over to the sort of, retail side. And, that's an entirely new set of skills that I've had to sort of try and acquire, and I can't say I've acquired them yet. It's a very different world. And it actually gave me new appreciation for what a lot of marketers and clients that I'd worked with go through every day. I'm going off a bit of a tangent here, but I remember working in agencies, and you tend to think because you're in an ad agency that your client is thinking about advertising all the time because it's so exciting and fantastic. And of course, they only think about it like 5% of the time. The rest of the time, they're doing other shit that's more important. And you're sitting there going, well, why haven't they returned my calls? It's because they're doing other stuff, that's way more important. And I was very kind of rudely awakened to that when I started my own brand, even in a very small way. Ironically, I didn't think about advertising that much either, because there was too much other stuff to do. But to get back to the point, I suppose it was thinking to myself, well, how do I become distinctive? How do I get noticed? And how do I just get proof of concept, if you like? So that was the sort of beginning, was can I get anyone to buy anything at all and actually say nice things about it? So I've managed to do that. I've managed to get customers, and so far they all seem to really, really like what I'm selling. And the other side of it was when I started, I thought, well, am I going to get a big bucket in my kitchen and start trying to make up soap and deodorant? And I quickly realized that was kind of a dumb idea, because to get good at making soap and deodorant takes ages. And even then it's quite hit and miss. So I just thought, well, I'll go down the white label route, which is, it just, for me, just made more sense, because there are people there doing a really good job making really good products that they know all about, and I can buy it from them. So you're in a world where, well, I can buy it at that price and I can sell it at this price. Is there a margin there that I can make any money out of? So yeah, going into multiples probably wasn't going to work very well for me because of the margin. That said, if Tesco's come along and say, we'd like to buy 10,000 products a week from you, I might have a chat with them. But for now, it's probably better for me to be doing direct to consumer. And I suppose really it's sort of getting to a point where the machine is starting to take care of itself. There are enough customers, they've bought into the brand, and the sort of e-commerce side of it is sort of taking orders while I sleep. Now that's the dream, is that it just works, and you've got a value proposition, or you've got an offer architecture on your homepage that just makes sense, and you make the website as easy to use as possible, and you get to a volume where you can even use a third party to do your fulfillment, and everyone's happy, and I can count the cash and go and live on a Caribbean island or something. But I'm not quite there yet.
I think a lot of us dream of that. To be fair, I think what's interesting there is that you clearly just like within a couple of seconds there of what you were saying, you were like illustrating the mechanics actually of good marketing for e-commerce really, and making sure that the website is really easy to use. I would probably add in there, which something you're massively aware of obviously now, is like knowing your numbers. For you now as going brand side, just how important is that to you now? Like how quickly did you have to learn that? We're talking cost of acquisition, average order value, time to payback and all that kind of stuff. When did you, how quickly did you realize that, or did the advertising background help you learn that quicker?
I'd love to say that it did, but in truth, it didn't at all. My background was in, I would say, far more traditional media, and I would say e-commerce was something I was aware of, but I didn't have a lot of kind of deep knowledge of at all. So I've really had to teach myself, and it took me quite a while to realize. I mean, obviously, there's the whole kind of thing: you buy at this price and you sell at this price, and there'll be some profit in between, and then you take out and so on, all the sort of basic stuff. But I think what I didn't count on was the sort of the theory, if you like, of how you make an e-commerce business work and how you then incorporate that with sort of things like a budget for Meta or Google advertising, which I was completely ignorant of. It's like for me anyway, it's like been just stepping into a completely different universe as far as judging how to make ads work. And what I found extraordinary is that in the advertising business, you spend a lot of time, or at least we used to spend a lot of time, sort of crafting ads. And there was a sort of way of writing an ad and communicating a message, which is completely different in the world of e-commerce. I think a lot of advertising people look at online advertising and Google advertising, and they kind of look down upon it. In reality, it's just a completely different way of selling, and it's a different way of putting people into the funnel, which again, advertising people can be quite snobby about because they're used to having a TV budget or having an integrated campaign budget. And it's just not like that with e-commerce. You're trying to grab people from a massively busy market, bazaar, and get them to come into your shop and have a look around. And they'll probably stay 10 seconds and then they'll bugger off because they haven't seen anything. And that was a really harsh lesson for me. And just the whole science of getting a website to do the work for you. Lots of trial and error on my part. And I can't even confess to having got that right yet. It's just trial and error, checking the data. And there's so much data. That's the other thing. Anyone who's ever looked at Google Analytics, it's the definition of loads of data, wanting meaning. And if I could do something better, it would be that. It would be
I'm
using the numbers more effectively.
I'm so glad you said that as well, actually, because that's something that we kind of profess as well, and we try and sort of teach our clients is, and we were talking off camera about Ken Robinson and creativity and even how that can be within science as well. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right in terms of, things like Meta and Google, that kind of advertising being completely different because it's ultimately direct response marketing. We need that quick feedback, and science and creativity play a massive part in that because you need to be able to iterate and you need to be creative about it. You need to be able to break the feed. You need to be able to get someone's attention within a couple of seconds and then take them through a journey, hold it long enough so that they can go through to the website. And then, like you said as well, the science of making a website work properly and easy to use, so there's a psychological science of taking them through that journey as well. And I'm really glad you said that about, the science of it, because it is a science. People seem to forget that it's not a plug and play, and people are talking about Meta trying to change the game immediately, but creativity and data, they go hand in hand. They're just two sides of the same coin. Would you agree with that, or would you go even further than that?
I would totally agree with you. And I would also say I definitely underestimated the complexity of not only that, but my store's on Shopify. And I'm not being paid by Shopify, but I'm so glad that I used Shopify because I'm not a coder. You know, I could have wasted so much time trying to put together a website that with a checkout that worked. And even, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they made this point of, you know, even 10, 15 years ago, to have a working website with a decent checkout would have cost $100,000 minimum, you know, just to get a bunch of coders and developers together. I worked for a digital agency 25 years ago who were building fairly straightforward websites by today's standards. And it was the amount of time and effort that went into it and the budget, it was insane. So the sort of the strides that have been taken in building an e-commerce site accessible to someone like me is amazing. But at the same time, even with all those tools, there's still a massive learning curve, a very steep learning curve, which I am still going. I mean, I was up late last night trying to get, you know, pages to work and menus and God knows what. I think overall, if I was to sort of, you know, give advice to anyone else who's thinking about starting an e-commerce brand, is do not underestimate how much extra work there is beyond just choosing your product range and pricing it. That's just one small part of it. You've got to sell the stuff and you've got to have the mechanism to do so. And it's just so much to learn. And I am still learning loads as I go. And I'm, you know, I'm only a year into it, but I mentioned having, you know, newfound respect for people who work client side, but I've also got a lot of respect for anyone who works in the e-commerce business, whether it's, you know, clients or agency. I think there's so much to it that people don't realize. So yeah, it's a lot. I'm probably more overwhelmed than I've ever been. But at the same time, because it's me, it's my business, I'm happy to do it. But yeah, it's a lot to deal with, but it's also very exciting.
It is exciting, and you're right. You know, the world of e-commerce, you know, although it's been around for a little while now, for some people, you know, most people actually, it's still relatively new, but we're all aware of it in some way, shape or form because it's just part of our daily behavior now in terms of how we buy things. And I think COVID obviously was a massive accelerant for that as well. And that was, to be fair, that's kind of like how our business boomed as well, because we were in the right place when something like that happened. But every business, every man and his dog wanted to go online at that point. So that was a massive accelerant, and that had to then change people's behavior. So people who were online at that point, they did very, very well because of that, because everybody's behavior just changed overnight, which was incredible. Sadly, we're kind of coming to the end and we're kind of running out of time here, but I feel like this could have been easily a 90-minute conversation. James, where can people find your product? Like, where can they find you? How can they connect with you? What are all the relevant links where people can go and get smelly?
Well, yeah, the big one is smellymen.co.uk. You can buy all our products from there, and very soon you'll be able to buy Smelly Women as well. I'm on Instagram at Smelly Men Official. There's also an at Smelly Women Official, which is actually a much bigger account than mine. So either or, visit us there, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well, James Allan, and Smelly Men are on LinkedIn. So yeah, all the favorite kind of platforms. I feel like I've just yacked at you for far too long.
No, it's good. No, it's really good. It's been really good, and you've been really generous with your time. I think we got into some really, really interesting concepts there, and you know, I think it was important for people listening to this to understand about the industry, the personal care industry, but also for me, even as a marketer, understanding that sort of like trip to the other side. You know, that from a marketing point of view, but to brand side. I mean, I'm lucky because one of my co-founders was brand side and then became marketing side. So, and I've not been the other side. So it's good to hear those two views. And I think for anybody listening who's either in a marketing role or they're in a brand role, like understanding the transposing of those two skill sets is really important. And hearing that from someone like yourself who's been both sides and experienced traditional media as it was, to now this sort of new age marketing of direct response, quick iteration, you know, you can't stand still at all. sort of mantra, really, and that's really interesting. So not at all have you yacked at me. It's been nothing but gold, James, and thank you so much.
Good. Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Brilliant. All the best, and thanks again.
Cheers. Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, man.